Hi guys, if you don't know me, my name is Brianne. I'm a CPA. I have a Master's of Accounting, and I am the founder of a startup called AI Empowered Solutions, where I train and teach small business owners how to optimize using AI. Today I want to go through what is called Obsidian and how to make Obsidian a strategic partner. If you haven't heard of Obsidian before, it's basically it's a third-party vendor that saves all your files that you work through Claude or whatever AI harness you're working through, and it develops interconnectivities such that when you use your AI harness, you get better outputs or you get more strategic decisions based on those interconnectivities in your vault. So what I want to do today is show you how to make Obsidian a strategic collaborator or a strategic partner to help you propel your mission and your vision of your organization. Okay, you guys. So the first thing you need to know about Obsidian is how everything saves in this vault. So what I've done here is I've created this fake company and it's called Wild Paw Vault, and I've just asked Claude to help me create this vault for this fake company. And they're an e-commerce online pet store. Now, when everything is being saved in this vault, all these files, they're all on the back end, either on your local drive or your cloud drive, however you're storing it. And for full disclaimer, I'm not going to be touching on confidentiality, privacy, or anything to do with what you're putting in the vault. You'll have to look at the privacy agreement with Obsidian and also how you're storing everything on your own drive, whether that be local or cloud. Now, all of these files are markdown files. If you don't know what a markdown file is, a markdown file is the best way that all these things like ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude kind of speak with each other. So you can think of it as like a Word document, but the format is a markdown file because that is the best way that these AI systems will ingest the data. Now, all of these are saved as markdown files, either on your local cloud drive, however you have it saved. And what Obsidian does, and where the value really comes in, is all these interconnectivities that connect these different folders and these different files to each other. The reason this is so valuable is because then you can go into your AI agent and you can ask it specific questions. Like you can ask it things like, what are things that I keep bringing up within my vault but that I'm avoiding doing? And that will give you some strategic direction on things that you need to address right away, and it fosters a level of accountability for your organization. So that's what we're really trying to do here, is we're trying to make it a strategic partner. So what I'm going to do first is show you how to develop these interconnectivities. Now, if you've been on Instagram, what you might be familiar with is the actual image showing these interconnectivities. Now, this is super great, but it's only valuable to the extent that these interconnectivities have value. So a lot of people are showcasing these things, but they're not really describing like where that brings value and how you can work with that within your AI to help drive your strategy. Okay, so what I want to do first is I'm going to show you how to go through and create these interconnectivities. And then eventually I want to get to a point where I'm working in Claude and showing you how it actually creates value for you towards the mission of your organization. Okay, so the first thing that I'd always recommend is creating a folder. This one's titled company, but this really is just your strategy. So it really should be going through, like, we have the Q3 2026 priorities. Now these are listing all our priorities that we want to achieve by Q3. Already you can see that this is going to be valuable when we put it into our AI system, because it's going to be able to analyze how we're progressing towards that based on the interconnectivities to the daily notes. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you how to create these interconnectivities. Now, if you do two brackets like this is going to connect to different files within your vault here. So that'll create a direct interconnectivity, and what we call it is a backlink. Now, if I wanted to, let's say instead I want to go to a header, then I would put a hashtag and it'll take me to a header. Now, let's say I want to go to what is called a specific block. Now, that is basically just like a paragraph within your vault, so you can also link it in that way. Now, another thing, let's just go back to doing, let's say 2026 OKRs. We want to connect it there. And then let's say we want the display name to look a little different. Then all we're going to do here is we're going to put a straight line and then we're going to call it 2026. And then it's just going to appear like 2026 instead of having the 2026 OKRs there. Either way works good. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is these front lines. Or front matters, sorry. So front matters are just at the top of your file or your whatever document markdown file you're working in. And it also helps establish interconnectivities. So one property I would always add in here would be what it serves. So if I'm in a daily note, let's say this one here, I want to say, okay, what I mostly worked on today was achieving, let's say, the retail expansion. So then in here, I'd be putting in retail expansion. Again, we're just creating these backlinks, but it creates just this layer of organization. And as we go through this, you're going to see that organization within the vault is one of the most fundamental things. This vault really should be the most up-to-date information about your organization. So think of it this way. When we're thinking about working with agents, it's almost like you're working with employees. So you want to give them all the most up-to-date information on your organization. And that is how value is going to be derived from this, is by giving them the information about your organization, giving them the pitfalls, maybe the things you've been avoiding, and they're going to be able to really help you propel your organization, right? Like they always say that thing about startups is that you should be hiring people who are smarter than you. So don't be afraid to throw things in here. Or let's say you add in a daily note that's like, I achieved nothing today, and you really just want the agent to help get you back on track. That's actually incredibly valuable, because you can think of it as like the agents are there to support you, and the more information you give it about where you're at in your organization, the better. Now you're going to see that with this, there potentially is like privacy around this. Like whatever you put in this, you want to assume that your employees are going to have access to. So that's just something that you should be considerate of. I know a lot of people are putting in quite personal information, and this vault can actually get quite vulnerable, because when you're going in and you're asking the agent like, hey, am I on track towards achieving these goals? And it's going to be straight up with you. It's going to tell you, hey, no, you're avoiding this, or like you keep circling around this idea, or whatever the case may be. Like that can be incredibly vulnerable, but it also fosters that level of self-awareness. Okay. So that's the front matter that I want to show you guys. Now, when you're creating front matter, I just want to show you how to do that really, really quick here. So if you go 3 lines like that, and then underneath it, you just write properties, it should work. It might not work in here because I've already created it at the top, but that's kind of the format. You just do the 3 lines and then it should work out. Now, the next thing that also establishes interconnectivities between the vault are these things called tags. So at the bottom here you'll see inbox and you'll see wildpaw. The connection's a little bit different than a backlink. A backlink is one-to-one, whereas a tag is a category connecting a bunch of different ideas, right? So it's one-to-many, and you can actually just search up tags in here. So anything that says whitepaw, and it'll show you all the information. That can also be incredibly valuable if you're wanting to just understand like all the different things that are connecting to that specific idea or category. Okay, now the next thing I want to show you guys, when I'm operating in the vault, I don't want any of my agents to have access to be able to make changes in my vault, because this is my authentic self. This is like this is my second brain, and so I want it to truly be just like as authentic as it can be. So what I've done is I've created this inbox folder, and this inbox folder is where the agents can go in and they can add in points or tips that I can later go in, and then like let's say I want to add in like another daily note, then I can consider it for that. And that just kind of keeps that separation and that segregation. It's a guardrail that you can put in place to make sure that everything that you have in here is your own, right? So I'm going to show you how to do that when I get back into Claude and the AI harness through the Claude MD files and through the memory.md files. Okay, awesome. So one other thing that I highly recommend is that you add in a daily note every single day. The reason you want to do this is like when you go back into Claude and you're asking an agent, tell me how I've progressed over time. If you have those daily notes in there, it's going to show you that progression over time. And it's also going to show you like how much you're leaning in towards that strategy, or ideas on like when you need to pivot. Really what we're trying to do is we're trying to just give all the information to the agent that can make it a strategic partner, you guys, okay? So that type of information is really, really good. Now, another thing that I want to talk about, and this is just in general markdown file etiquette, the longer the file, the more likely that your AI is going to drift. And when I say drift, that means it's going to start going off topic and it's not going to be focusing on what you have within your vault. So you really want these to be short and concise. And so you can see in here, like, not a long markdown file. I try to keep them like quite small, you guys. And the other thing to note here, AI is really good at reading the first and the last part. It can get lost in the middle, so you really want to reduce the chances of bloat. Another thing you can do, and I can show you guys how to do this later, you can develop a skill that goes into your Obsidian file and just considers points to reduce bloat. And you can do that without getting it to actually make the changes, and that's just through implementing different guardrails. Okay, now another thing I want to show you guys here is what is called a map of content. So sometimes you're going to want to put this at the front of a folder, specifically this example in the projects, where you can see that this startup is going through 4 different projects. So it can actually be really helpful just to like create these backlinks and do like a map of content. So it's just your content at the front of your folder that just clearly links in all the different components. And again, you're just creating more interconnectivities, and it's creating that level of organization for your vault. Now, the other thing I want to show you guys, for situations where you're going in and you're adding documents every day, so something like these daily notes, you can actually just make the skeleton of that a template, and then you can pull that in every day and just update it as such. So really, really easy. Another way just to create more organization and keep things very like following a systematic approach. And I'll show you how you can go in and do that. Okay, so if you open up the options here, you can actually just go to templates at the bottom here, and then it'll show you like you can add in where your template folder is. Here it would be the vault templates, and then you can add in date format, time format. So that'll link in your template specifically. There's also this daily notes folder where you can add in and kind of systematically create an approach for your daily notes as well. And so you'll tell it where the notes will be placed. And then here you'll actually tell it where the template file location is. So this is really useful for specifically daily notes. And Obsidian knows that that's something that you're going to be following a specific format every day. So I'm actually just going to put that in here, that my new file location is in templates and my template location is in my daily notes folder here. So let me just find that. Yeah, daily notes. Okay, so now you can see that it's just going to go in and follow the same format as my July 1st template. Okay, so those are some good points that I wanted to show you guys. Now, the next thing that I want to show you guys, if I go in here and I open the graph view, right now you can see all the interconnectivities. These are just showing backlinks. One thing actually that I want to show you guys before we look at the graph here, I want to just go back into my vault here, and I want to show you guys how Obsidian can sometimes actually catch backlinks that you wouldn't have even considered. So I had one in here and I just want to find it. It shows all the links on the side here, so you can see that. And then if you add in, okay, I'm just going to add one in here. Let's just say that like for July 2nd, I was really working on my retail expansion. I'm just going to type that in here, but let's say I forgot to add in a backlink. I'm just going to type that and see what it does. So it should say unlinked mentions here, and you can actually go in there and directly link it later on if you think that that's actually an interconnectivity. Okay, so wonderful. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys, like I had mentioned earlier, is the graph. So this is where it's kind of like, you know, what everyone thinks is like the nice appearance and the fanciness of your Obsidian vault. And it's really interesting because it's just like these neural networks and of like your second brain, and the value is like as good as the input you give it, right? So that's why it's like so important that these are all concise and very on point, that you're really vulnerable and with your vault if you feel comfortable sharing that information. And again, privacy, manage that as you will. But if I go here to settings, one thing I want to show you guys is you can add in tags. So like, remember I mentioned earlier that tags is a one-to-many relationship. So if I hit on product, I can see that I talk about that in my website replatform, my subscription relaunch, and my white paw fresh. So a question that I might go in and and then ask my AI to get kind of strategic direction is like, how much have I been working on the products in those two platforms? And then that'll give me an understanding of like, okay, am I working towards my goals? And so I would add in there as well as of like, then take that and compare it against what I have in my company folder for what my strategic goals are. And then I might also ask it like, is there anything that I'm kind of avoiding or that I keep mentioning, but there's no actual interconnectivities here? And then it might mention something. It's like, okay, wow, like I actually see that there's opportunity here to, I don't know, add in like retail expansion and focus on more products. Okay, so you can start to see that like this is really what I like to call it is AI resourcefulness. So you constantly have to be thinking about what kind of information could I give AI so that it gives me more benefit for that relationship that I'm developing with my. Okay, you guys, so I want to give you some examples of things you could ask AI to get value out of this strategically for your organization. So number one, let's say you have in here some information about vendors. Again, privacy, you guys will carry the onus on that and determine if you want to have information about your vendors on there. But let's say you go in and you do have information about your partners, your vendors. So you could ask Obsidian, based on the interconnectivities, what vendors or relationships am I underutilizing? Now, another one you could be asking it is if you have, let's say, daily notes spanning like 3 months, eventually that's going to be the goal, is getting to that point, then you can go in and ask it and be like, how has a decision evolved over time? And am I in a better position now, or am I in a worse position based on what my strategic direction is? Okay. Number 3 could be something along the lines of, what are the 3 biggest gaps based on the entire folder that you have read, or my entire vault? Now, the next thing you could be asking it, what keeps coming up in my daily notes that is an issue and that I keep kind of going around? And based on that, what would you recommend my next approach be to solve that issue? Another thing you could have in here is like standard operating procedures. You could have that as a template for when you're hiring a new individual. Another thing that I actually have in here in my templates is my Claude and my memory.md files. For every time that I add a new agent, I want to have that to be very systematic and have them linked to specific folders within my Obsidian vault so that they're acting according to, number 1, the strategy, and number 2, whatever is most relevant for their job or their role. Okay, so the next thing I want to do with you guys is I want to go back into Claude and into AI, and I want to implement one of these things where I'm creating a skill that goes into my Obsidian vault and actually creates that strategic value. So that's what we're going to do next. You guys, I recorded this part and then I realized my screen wasn't recording, so we're starting over here. Okay, anyways, I want to show you guys the skill I created to get strategic value out of my Obsidian vault. So I'm going to take a couple steps back before we get there. The first thing I want to talk about is how I've kind of orchestrated this agent. So I've literally just created a folder in my cloud or in my Google Drive, which I have saved on the cloud. You can do your local drive or whatever you're using. And then I've created this claude.md file, this memory.md file, and this skill.md file. And I'm calling this my CEO. Now I'm working within Claude. Claude is the AI harness that is basically helping me orchestrate all of these and orchestrate this agent actually working through its stated goal. So I want to go through these MD files because there's a few different ones. The Claude.md file, you don't actually necessarily need these for every single agent. Sometimes if you're creating these Claude.md files, it's just giving it extra context that isn't really relevant for whatever you're trying to get that agent to do. And it can just create more context that's going to cost more tokens for the agent to analyze and can make it more susceptible to AI drift, which makes the AI system kind of go off track. So again, I really stress only giving it the information you need it. Now, what this Claude.md file is, if you choose to put one into a specific folder, it just gives the agent context on who it is. So here in this one, I said, you're a founder, you're the CEO, and I want you to reference all these folders with whatever I ask you to do within this agent. So for this case, I like that because I'm going to spend a lot of time, theoretically, you're going to spend a lot of time talking to your CEO and having general questions about this specific folder. So having that kind of right up in the forefront of this agent's mind while it's going through that loop can be really, really valuable. Now the next one I'm going to show you guys is the memory.md file. So you'll see in the Claude.md file, I reference going to the memory.md file for accumulated context. Now the memory.md file, the whole point of this Obsidian vault is to almost kind of like replace having these massive MD files. So all I've put in this memory MD file, it's super short. I said, any kind of reflection points, I just want you to put into this inbox folder. Now, one thing I want to say here is the output you get from these agents is only going to be as good as the input that you're giving it. So you can see here, I said all reflection points, but I haven't operationalized that. I haven't told it like, what is a reflection point? So when it's okay to start like that, but if you don't get that good of an output, all you're going to do is you're going to iterate and you're going to talk to the agent and be like, okay, well, this is what I actually wanted. Now go and do that. And then once it's done that, be like, okay, what have you learned and how can you update that MD file? So in the case of this memory.md file, if it responds to me and tells me something that I think is actually a really good strategic plan, I might be, and let's say it doesn't actually go into the inbox, then I might work with the agent and be like, okay, put this into my inbox within my Obsidian vault. And then I'm going to say, I noticed that you didn't automatically do that. Why didn't you automatically do that? Because that was a reflection point. What have you learned and how can you update your memory.md file? Okay, so that's how you're going to kind of iterate and improve these over time. So you can see a lot of AI is just working with it, starting with it, and playing around with it. And that's why it's so important to start early on and start small, because there's just going to be so much learning as you go on and on. And the value is going to be from starting small and growing from there. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys is what is called the skill.md file. So some of your agents, all you might have in it is a skill.md file. And the skill.md file, when you think of it in the context of training an employee, let's say you work at a restaurant and you're training an employee how to wash dishes, that is a skill. So it's the same thing here. You're teaching that agent exactly how to execute on a task or how to perform something that you want it to do. So this skill.md file, for my liking, it's actually a little bit too long, but that's okay. We're going to play with it. We're going to see what it gives us, and then we can iterate as we keep going. So there's a few things you're going to want to put in your skill.md file. The first thing is you're going to want to tell it who it is. And then, so here you can say you're the CEO, and you're going to want to tell it what this skill is. So this skill is a strategic gut check. Okay. Now, you're going to want to tell it when to execute on this. So you're going to execute, the CEO is going to execute anytime I say, am I on track with my goals, or any of these other points. Another thing you can do is you can actually just set it up as a schedule. And then instead of saying this skill should happen whenever I say this, you can just make the skill happen at a specific time frame. Okay. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is tell it like, what are you actually doing for me? So here it's saying it's an honest mirror for the founder. It's not here's what your notes are, but here's what your notes prove you're actually doing versus what you said mattered. So that's really, really powerful, right, you guys? It's going into this entire Obsidian vault and it's analyzing these connections. It's analyzing these different folders, and it's literally telling us, are we on track for our goals? Like that, either number one would have taken me or anyone else so much time to build out and to spend like trying to analyze these connections. And number two, a lot of times it'd probably be lost just in paper files, or like it wouldn't be saved in one vault. And that's why it's incredibly important that you're actually reflecting in your vault, that you're actually developing those interconnectivities. That's where you really want to be spending your time. Like these agents, the response that they give you, the value of it is going to be a direct reflection of like what you're actually giving it and the value you're giving it. Are you actually putting in notes into your Obsidian vault every day so that it can analyze your 3-month plan or whatever, right, you guys? Okay, so then you're going to give it its instructions. So read the strategy, map execution, and then check milestones. One thing I want to point out that is really cool here, it says pay special attention to launch dependencies. So let's say projects that we're trying to launch whose deadline is close, but whose status is still in build or unowned. For an AI agent to be able to call that out, that's incredibly valuable. It can then really focus your attention on gaps that aren't being addressed. Okay, and then it says deliver the gut check. So here's where if you wanted this in a Word document, then you can put that in there. Or if you have a connection to like your Outlook or to your Gmail, that's where you're going to want to be like, okay, draft an email with these so that I can send this off to like project manager, whatever, right? You can build these out over time and you can create more MCPs and more connections so that it streamlines the process more and more. But what we're really trying to do right now is we're trying to start really small. So it says what's genuinely working, what you're avoiding, the attention gap, where to focus next. Okay, so I already asked it to execute on this skill because it takes a little bit of time. And so here it's given me 4 different points here. And it's told me like what's genuinely working, what we're avoiding, the attention gap. Okay, so let's just read through some of these things here. It said, the attention gap. Let's just read, actually, let's read this one here on timing. Wellness Go Live is 6 weeks out, but the attached flow is still in build, and your note lists attached flow QA before August 15 as an open loop with no owner or date attached, right? So that's really valuable to know that, because now it can be like, okay, who actually owns that project? I'm going to send them an email, follow up on that, and we're going to start getting things moving forward to address that, right? And then it's telling me here it's going to put together an order list, and then it's asking me quick checks in. So maybe these are things that I actually haven't put into my vault, but that I've remembered in my head, and it wants to verify those. So you can see that's also incredibly valuable. It's almost trying to pick up the gaps on things that I'm not putting into the vault. So this is just one example, you guys, of how you can use that vault to drive value. Now, the other thing you can do, if you're unsure of like ideas specifically for your business on how to use a vault, literally just start talking with AI and be like, I want to use this vault. I want to get value out of it. I think there's maybe this one problem, right? Because early on, you don't really know what each tool can do. So by just talking with AI and developing ideas over time, you're really going to create that foundation. Okay, awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you guys today, and I'll be back soon with more videos.